Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Young again. It's Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And like every week, every Thursday, I'm here with a new presenter for you. I try to find new ideas, new speakers, new services for you that you may not be aware of for your practice. And today I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Roberts to you. She's the founder of CrockPet Diet. So it's a crockpot diet for your pet. And instead of being a raw diet, it's actually a cooked diet. And that kind of spiked my interest. I know as veterinarians, we don't like to prescribe raw diets too often. And yet we're always faced with the challenges of the recalls on the pet foods out there. So I'm really excited to hear what Dr. Roberts has to say, and I'll just hand it over to her. If you have any questions, just type it in the message box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll read it to her as we get to the end of the presentation. So Dr. Roberts, welcome, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Young. It's a pleasure to be here and start getting this a different message out about pet food. And I kind of got into this through two things happening. One was I had significant health problems back in 2005 and 2006, and that corresponded with a time when I was beginning to study acupuncture and traditional Chinese veterinary medicine. So at the Qi Institute, they were talking quite a bit about cooking at home, which was, of course, just horrifying to me at the time. And as I got more and more into that program and began to see the changes that I had in my own health because of the way that I changed my diet, I began to think that maybe it wasn't such a bad idea after all. So with that, I'm going to pop up the slide deck I've got here for you so you guys can kind of read along. And if you'll pardon me just a moment. If I can figure out the buttons, we should be in good shape. And let me go ahead and start that. And what you're seeing here is the logo for the original CrockPet Diet. And it says there below it, that's sort of the other part of the tagline, is that your pet's best health begins in the bowl. And that's something that I found to be true time and time again. When I started doing this, it was frightening because I was totally outside everything I knew. But ultimately, the CrockPet Diet can be used to help improve the health and wellness for all pets. And it puts the pet owner back in control of what's being fed to their pets so that they can customize the diet within reason to help avoid food sensitivities and also to help support other health issues. And the guiding concepts of the CrockPet Diet is using concepts from traditional Chinese veterinary medicine as well as functional medicine, which you all may or may not be familiar with, but I'll explain a little bit about that. So who I am, I finished veterinary school in 1990, so I'm getting to be an old head, as it were. And then I finished the acupuncture certification in 2006 at Qi Institute. I've completed their herbology certification in 2008. And while I completed the food therapy course in 2006, the certification process they had didn't start until 2010. And so that's when I achieved that designation. And a little bit about my practice. I opened Sundog Cat Moon Veterinary Clinic in 2009. And if you see the logo, it's actually it's sort of a bulldog and a cat paired in an yin-yang symbol. And that's...
So Dr. Roberts, yeah. Can I interrupt you for a second? Yes. Because I'm not seeing you, I'm still on the first slide. I wasn't sure if that's where we're supposed to be.
So, and are you seeing one with my name on it currently or still the logo?
Right now I'm not seeing any slides. So awesome. If you could talk so it goes back to your screen. Let me see.
Sure. Is that making any difference there?
Nope, I have a black screen.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know these technical difficulties. Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Okay, now I just saw your slide with your name on it.
Okay, well, and I guess, let me see if I can get back into play mode or not. So is that working for you?
It's just your slide up with your name on it and
Perfect.
writing underneath it.
Yep, that's exactly it. So that's where we should be. Does that work okay?
Now I've got a black screen again.
All right. Does that make it come back?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, well, we'll just deal with that. And you can read the presenter notes too. So at any rate, so the interesting thing about Sundog Cat Moon is that we do integrative medicine. So it's everything that you went to veterinary school to learn. And for me, integrative medicine means Chinese, traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, functional medicine, cold laser therapy, and a few other bits and pieces. But it can mean any other modality you can think of, whether that's massage, homeopathy, chiropractic, and some others that we probably are leaving out. But the thing that's fascinating is that we started from zero in 2009 and have grown by at least 25% each year. And that I've achieved more success within this practice model than I did in 14 years of my previous practice. And ultimately, I sold the previous practice because of some health issues. So integrative medicine was coined by Dr. Weil, but it started to take hold both in the human side and then in the veterinary side as well. But because of the things that we offer and the solutions that we offer, we have clients that drive as much as 2 hours to come see us. So it's been really fulfilling to help people. And how I got into this is in 2005, I had really significant health issues. I had 4 bulging cervical discs. I couldn't feel my right arm for most of the time. I had fibromyalgia, and I was about 80 pounds overweight. And I'd seen many of my clients go through sort of the mill, if you will, of pain control and end up on narcotic pain medications, and often, losing so much, losing their ability to work, losing their ability to enjoy life. And since I had already started studying acupuncture at Chi, I decided to start looking for a doctor that could practice integrative medicine, so understanding both the conventional parts as well as the alternatives out there. And I also found an acupuncturist in town. So over the course of several years, I was able to get my weight down, get the pain gone actually within about a year's time, and over 2 or 3 years reverse the fibromyalgia symptoms. And much of that took place simply by adjusting how I was eating. And so what I decided is that I should apply what I know. In 2006, I'd already kind of bit the bullet and started offering a very basic recipe in the office. And then the first pet food recall hit. And as we got into that recall, nobody knew what to do or what to trust. So I took this basic recipe, adapted it to a larger batch that would provide at least 4 to 5 days worth of food for a 50-pound dog, so that it was easier for folks to do. And we started seeing dramatic changes in how pets were looking and feeling and acting. Certainly weight loss was one of the big ones. Much of the skin disease we saw in South Carolina really resolved or significantly reduced the symptoms. A lot of dogs with chronic kind of upset stomach, cats as well, there it's a little bit more of a trick. Their symptoms resolved. And we saw renal disease stabilizing, which didn't make sense to me at first. But over the years since 2006, I've modified the recipe to reflect current nutrition concepts. So there's a lot of talk about paleo diet, and there's a lot of talk about dogs being wolves in ancestry and raw food being their ancestral diet. And what I've found is that it's ours as well, but it's for progenitor species prior to us and to Canis familiaris. So really they've been eating at first our garbage and then our leftovers until really the 50s. So I've continue to refine the recipe to incorporate more current concepts in nutrition as well as functional medicine concepts. So this is a basic copy of the recipe, and I'll give you my email address sort of at the end, and if you'd like a little bit more detailed version of it, I'm happy to email that with you to you so that you can use it. But essentially it's 3 pounds of a protein. So we generally use turkey, pork, and beef because I'm in South Carolina, and those proteins are more energetically cooling. Coconut oil, brassica vegetables play a large role, and then other vegetables, and we try to focus on things that are more seasonal. And then turmeric and mustard in Chinese medicine are considered to help resolve stagnation, which can be anything from cancer to anxiety. Same thing with garlic. The calcium is in there as a calcium phosphorus balancer so that we don't create bone issues in our pets. And then as a carbohydrate source, usually a whole grain or 3 medium potatoes, whether those are white potatoes or sweet potatoes, iodized salt, and then daily the person must add a multivitamin to each meal. So the thing that's lovely is that you can throw all of this stuff into a crock pot and cook it on low for about 8 hours. And most people will cook the rice or grain separately just because it helps to prevent it from burning or cooking improperly. But this is something that most people can accomplish in about 10 minutes. The backside of preparing it to store takes another 10 minutes, and we'll advise folks to keep mostly 5 days worth of food in the refrigerator so it doesn't go bad. We also recommend avoiding ground meats because they contain pink slime, and if you're not sure what that is, you should Google it and get horrified. And then again, organic vegetables and meats would be fantastic. I can't afford it for my pets, but we do try to use as much locally produced produce as possible. So again, that's kind of the basic recipe, and it is complete and balanced. I did work with a boarded veterinary nutritionist to make sure that we're meeting all of the AAFCO standards, so it is complete and balanced for all life stages according to their standards. And then there are the nutritional breakdowns below. For the cat recipe is a little bit different in that it does not contain an additional carbohydrate source, and it contains far less vegetables as well. So it breaks down to about 227 calories per cup of food for dogs, and then pretty close to a 30-30-30 breakdown with protein, fat, and carbohydrate, versus most commercial foods are somewhere around 60% or more of carbohydrate. And then in cats, this is optimized more for how they need to eat, and some would argue that even the carbohydrate content is a bit high for that. Part of the reason I continued with this is that frankly, most clients don't believe us when we start talking about prescription diets. And they want something they can trust. As Dr. Young mentioned earlier, we have ongoing pet food recalls. And so we're all sort of dismayed on a regular basis as to why does this keep happening. But pet owners do get confused about what to do. There's a lot of information about raw food out there, but often they get grossed out. And technically, preventing disease is somewhat difficult. I had a friend who was raw feeding her dogs. All the dogs got salmonella. She and her husband got salmonella, and then ultimately the horses did as well. So they really had a mess getting that cleaned up. As I said, part of how I came up with the diet is based on traditional Chinese veterinary medicine principles. And so I mentioned earlier, we tend to use more cooling proteins because we're in South Carolina, a hot, humid area. So the example I give most clients about how that works is that in July at a picnic, you probably don't want to eat a lamb roast, but a watermelon slice is going to sound really nice and cool and refreshing. Another thing about traditional Chinese medicine, sort of when we're writing about it, if a word is capitalized, even though it's something that we understand physiologically, it refers to that concept in Chinese medicine. So you'll see there that I've written tonified blood, qi and yin. In this instance, it refers to TCM blood, which is a nutritional fluid. So a very different concept from 3,000 years ago. And again, tonified kidney, again, capitalized because we're talking about the energetic or TCVM organ. The reason that kidney is so important in Chinese medicine is that it stores Jing, or essence. And once you run out of Jing, you're out, period. So part of the goal of feeding this way is to tonify the kidney, but also create postnatal jangerescence by feeding high quality food. And then the 100-degree soup, the Chinese considered to be the stomach, the cooker of the 100-degree soup. So that actually equated to body temperature. And the idea was that if you ate something really cold, it was difficult to digest. And if you ate something really hot, then you were going to kind of screw up the work, so to speak. So one thing we'll tell clients when they're feeding this is to scoop out what they're going to feed into the bowl and then add some more water to take off the chill. And that makes it pretty simple to do. And then additionally, cooking in a crock pot allows a long, low cooking temperature, and so the food energetically doesn't have a lot of heat added to it. And I did mention earlier too, I applied some functional medicine principles. And if you've not looked at this system of medicine, the concepts are to look at systems of function versus organ-based disease. So the Institute for Functional Medicine is one of the big proponents on the human side, and they detail out 7 different categories of function. But the 3 that I found most important and relative to veterinary practice are to support digestion, support detoxification, or the body's ability to clear waste products, and then to control inflammation. So the part of the way this diet works is that by providing a high fiber diet, we're providing a substrate for good bacteria to thrive. And it also helps to kind of clean out the gunk physically. We support detoxification by using a lot of brassica vegetables, which improves the liver's ability to detoxify. So it actually helps improve phase 2 detoxification, which is the thing that gets us skewed when we've used medications like prednisone and things of that nature. It actually, prednisone affects that detoxification pathway. And then lastly, we use low inflammatory foods. So things that do not have gluten or corn. So zein protein is the issue in corn, gluten is the issue in wheat, and that's actually been shown to damage intestinal epithelial systems, amongst other things. So that's kind of the basics on a quick rundown on functional medicine. One of the things that most veterinarians are thinking about, what do we do about prescription diets and the function that they fill in the office? And so if you look at those diets, what you'll find is that the ingredients of most of them are turkey, corn, and chicken with additives to make them do the prescription function. So for instance, with urinary tract disease, they generally add an acidifier, so either potassium citrate or methionine, but you can do that as well. So the owner can get urine pH strips, and then we either add methionine or vitamin C to acidify, or if the urine is too acidic, then we can add baking soda to help alkalinize it so they don't produce those calcium oxalate stones. For a renal or liver diet, then we would adjust the protein downward. The GI diet, we would adjust the types of vegetables so that they're easy to digest and very simple. And then for hypoallergenic type diets, you have a broad spectrum of ingredients that you can use. So that's some of the questions I've gotten from my colleagues in the past. And then lastly, what it's ultimately done for us is create a new profit center. Even though we're not selling food, we are selling supplements that the clients need to make that diet complete. And it's important, whether they buy them from you or whether they buy them online, that they understand what they need to do to add in to make it complete. So one is bone meal or calcium, and we can use a calcium supplement without vitamin D. There is some concern about toxicity in dogs still. Coconut oil is another one that you can buy relatively inexpensively and sell to your client for often the same or less than they could go to Whole Foods to find it. And then lastly, they do need a multivitamin to balance the diet. So for dogs, we'll generally use Canine Plus or a standard process product. And for cats, we generally use NuCat because it provides the taurine that they need on a daily basis. So when we started looking at this, after I'd been in business in Sundog Cat Moon for a couple of years, I realized that we have a 50% markup on supplements. And I think the last time I looked at prescription foods, it was somewhere around 25% at most. You don't have a huge amount of space taken up with bags of food. And ultimately, the clients are happy because they're participating in how they're caring for their pets. And they come in monthly for refills on their supplements, and they bond to the practice. They interact with us. They say, hey, you know, I've been noticing this, and is that something I should be concerned about? And we can help either make them feel comfortable about it or say, no, you really should bring your pet in and let's take a look at that. So I think we're hitting our 20-minute or so mark. I do have some contact information for you. Again, if you would like a copy of the recipe as well as some more detailed instructions on how to use the diet, please let me know. I'm happy to help you. I will be developing a program to help veterinarians implement this in their practice so that they can seem to be more ahead of the curve, if you will, as far as what they understand in nutrition. I think that one of the really bad things that last food recall did to us is it took us away from being the nutrition experts. So I think hopefully that makes sense to you. But this is an opportunity for you to dramatically improve pets' health as well as improve how clients perceive your practice. So any questions, happy to answer, or whatever else I can do.
Yep. So if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and type them in the chat box. Yeah, I just loved it. I want to hear more about it. I'm ready to have a whole hour presentation on this. But a couple of the questions that I had, and you answered my multivitamin question, you said avoid ground meats. And so when I was thinking about cooking for my dog, one of the things that I don't purchase red meat from the store, but I will eat venison. So when you get venison, you know, there's nothing added to it. So as ground venison, if you get it straight from the processor,
right?
Are you okay with that? And is that you were talking about cool protein versus hot protein?
Right. And venison is actually a very hot protein. So we have a lot of folks that are deer hunters in South Carolina. So what we say is maybe feed that during the cooler months and then balance it with other things that are going to be more cooling in nature. But you're right. And certainly if you've got a local butcher that can grind stuff for you on premises, that's a fantastic way to go. The commercial products that come to the grocery store ground often do contain pink slime, and that's sort of one of these abomination foods we try to avoid.
Right. Excellent. You know, it's really interesting how this all makes sense, because it just goes back to nature. I mean, we hunt deer in the fall and in the winter when we need the hotter proteins.
Yes.
So it just, it makes sense if we could just go back to listening to nature and listening to our bodies. We want to eat more in the winter, less in the summer, just because, that's natural. So one question that I had was about the lack of crunchiness of the food, because we always think that, the kibble is what cleans the dog's teeth,
right,
the cat's teeth. So how do you address that?
Well, it's interesting. So if you look at Hill's studies on TD diet, their dental diet, when they're trying to sell you the diet, they'll tell you that unless they're eating a kibble size, something like an inch in diameter or an inch square for a dog, and I think it's a quarter, half or a third inch for cats or small breed dogs, dry food doesn't make any difference as far as dental health. What we found with the CrockPet diet is that because the pets are eating this and sort of lolling it around in their mouths more instead of just swoofing down the kernels, we've actually seen their dental health improve dramatically, because the saliva that's released as they're eating the food and sort of moving it around in their mouths is quite a bit. And that saliva production is very important in actually controlling the bacteria in the mouth. So it's sort of the opposite of what you would think.
Right. Perfect, because that's what I've noticed. I used to feed raw to my dogs, and I noticed that the teeth are a lot better. The other thing also, if you're a horse owner, if you would just feed them whole oats instead of the processed food, you'll see the saliva that it creates in their mouth, and just the whole health profile of horses just changes when they're on whole oats instead of the processed feed that we feed them right now. So I had to throw that in there.
Yes, and that makes sense. Yeah, because they're digesting it the way they should be and not presenting all this intense carbohydrate to the bacteria in the gut versus it goes down with the fiber. It makes absolute sense.
Yep, excellent. And so then the other thing, when you do have those dogs that have allergies and they're licking their paws, and you see the discoloration in their fur from the saliva from licking, and you start them then on this CrockPet diet, how long will it take before you see a change in the discoloration of the fur?
It depends. So if we've got a pet that's been eating Beneful, in 2 weeks, if they've been eating Akana, it may take some dinking around to get it right. And generally, what I'll do is start with, if I can get them to do a NutriScan test, that's great. It's an expensive test, but I think it helps quite a bit in determining food sensitivities. And that's Dr. Dodd's saliva-based food sensitivity test. And then otherwise, what I'll do is ask what they've been feeding over the last 6 months, both in terms of food that goes into the bowl, as well as treats, and then anything else that the owner might share with the pet. And then what we'll do is avoid those foods and then just build a diet based on things they haven't seen for 6 months.
Gotcha. So actually, that's another question that I have. What about treats? Are you suggesting any specific treats? Are you telling owners to just stay away from treats for a while? How does that fit into the diet?
Well, there's a couple of ways to do that. One is we've had clients that take little teaspoonfuls of food and bake it at 250 until they're dry. We'll have people that dehydrate the protein that they're feeding so that that's available. I think that's getting to be more and more popular as single protein treats, so you can actually control what's going in. Or they'll feed raw vegetables, so carrots, green beans, things of that nature. So we try to help continue to orient them towards whole foods rather than things that are processed.
Excellent. So I know we have 2 more minutes, and I just have one more question for you. What about traveling? What if you, go on vacation and your pet goes with you? Do you substitute then a kibble while you're traveling, or what do you recommend for that?
There's certainly lots of different ways to do it. I've got a client that when they travel with their dachshund, they actually pre-prepare the meals in little individual storage containers and freeze them. And so as they're needing the meals, they just bring 1 or 2 out of the cooler for the day and go from there. And then I've got other clients that will use kibble while they're traveling, or canned food, or kind of whatever ends up making the most sense.
Gotcha. So is there a kibble? So say if you don't have a dachshund, say you have a big dog, and it's just not going to, you're not going to be able to freeze and take all that food with you. Is there a specific kibble that you recommend with all the information that you have on diets, nutrition, and dogs, and
things of that nature? I think the thing I keep trying to tell everybody is to read labels. So there's several brands. Akana, Origin are one of the few that have never had a pet food recall so far as I'm aware. From is usually fairly good. Merit can be good. Signature is a good one. But what I tell folks is, just read Dog Food Advisor or something similar so that they can get the lowdown on what's there. And then before they buy a bag of food, read the ingredients, because often the manufacturer will change ingredients and slip something in there that wasn't there previously that might create an issue. And a lot of clients will do a mix of cooked food and dry food. But what I keep telling them is to rotate not only the proteins and carbohydrates, but also the brand of food, so that literally you're less likely to be stuck holding the bag should there be a pet food recall.
Oh, I've never thought about that. That's great advice. Excellent. While we're at the 1:30 mark, I did have one more question. I know
Sure.
I could have 10 more, but just one more. How open so I'm not a practicing veterinarian anymore. I do the coaching and consulting. But how open are veterinarians right now in, promoting a diet that is, cooked? Obviously, the cooked diet is probably easier to promote than the raw diet. But how open are veterinarians nowadays in general about recommending something besides Science Diet, Hills, and all of the other ones.
Well, what's been interesting is that most of my colleagues locally, they're getting questions from their clients. What's safe to food? I don't want to feed this bag of food. And so they end up sending them over to our website to get information about the cooked diet. So I think what it boils down to is that there's a great deal of interest, but there's also a great deal of fear, because what we've been trained to think is that if it doesn't come out of the bag, then it can't possibly be nutritionally safe and balanced and things of that nature. And I understand that. I was in those shoes almost 10 years ago. But I think there's a great deal of interest. It's just there's a lot of uncertainty as to how to accomplish it without creating any health issues.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
My
This was
pleasure.
fantastic.
Wonderful.
Thank you. We'll see everybody next week, next Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week. Bye-bye.